For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I had a treasure. I was probably 12. It had come in a very small box under the Christmas tree. And I was at the age where I was learning that a small box might be a good thing. And in this small box from my father was a silver necklace. And it was kind of heavy. It was one of those sort of where the chains are very thick and it lays flat. And it was quite satisfying in your hand. It was really something. And I think was old enough to have real jewelry. And it was a treasure. And I loved it. I wore it every day to school. And I'm the one that kind of fiddles with things a little, so I'd take it off, and I'd admire it, and I'd put it back on, and I'd put it in my pocket for a while, and I'd put it back on, and it spun quite satisfyingly around your finger and would kind of wrap around it. And so as I'm listening to the teachers, did that quite a bit. And I was always very careful with it. It was my treasure, right? So I'd admire it. I'd kind of appreciate the way it would pull in my hand, but I was very careful. And I would, always keep good track of where it was and try to put it back on again or have it carefully zipped into that front pocket of my backpack or locked in my locker. I had a lot of safe places for it. And maybe you know where this is going. When you have a lot of safe places for something, right? I always put it in a safe place. Top drawer of my dresser was a very safe place. I'm not quite sure where the last safe place I put it was. It's still somewhere. I hope it might be in my parents' house, and someday it will surface, but I suspect it's in the lockers at that school, or I don't know. I put it somewhere very safe because I was so careful. And it was so safe that I never had it again. Now, I don't think that necklace is exactly the sort of treasure that Jesus is talking about, but in my world at that time, it wasn't too far off. And it's always stood for me as a lesson about myself and about how reliable I am with precious things. If you ever have the chance to walk past my left hand, you will notice there's no fancy diamond on this hand. The idea of something like that terrifies me. The ways that I could lose that are many. And as my spouse, my coworkers can tell you, my keys have a habit of either being left at home or locked in the office, a little more than probably seems reasonable. And maybe you're more reliable, and you can keep track of stuff a bit better. But as a human being, you are in the same place I am tonight. You are here, waiting to smear ash on your forehead, and to be honest. Honest with yourself, and with all those people sitting next to you, and honest with God that really we can't hold on to anything. Between us all, we know many times when we've done our very best and it has not been enough. We know times when we've been so very careful with something so precious, a relationship maybe, or our dearest hope, and it's still gone up in flames. We know times when all the love in the world has not restored our loved ones to health, and when all the faithful work we put in is not going to prevent layoffs. There is no grip tight enough to hold on to what we hold most dear. Not the way we'd like to hold it anyways. We have values that we'd like to hold up for our children and for the world, and often enough, our grip on them, even those, it's only approximate, right? Our hands, no matter how hardworking, no matter how strong, no matter how careful, are powerless to keep a hold even of our own life from day one to the next. In Lent, we are going to be talking about the cost of following Jesus. What does that ask of us, and what does it ask of God? And tonight, it sounds to me like the cost of following Jesus is honesty. Truth in the inward being, right from the psalm. no BS, the truth. That we cannot hold on to our lives. We cannot hold on to our spotless, sinless selves. We cannot hold on to the things that we think are most important. All of it, when we try to hang on to it, is subject to rust and to moth and to thieves, and we could make a list, right? So the cost of following Jesus in some ways is everything. It's all our treasure. And in some ways it's nothing, because it's all our treasure that we can't hold on to in the first place. I feel like that's what ashes are about, right? All of our stockpiles and storehouses and best efforts at virtue, ultimately we find ash, right? We have to admit that we are not okay. That I am not okay, and that you are not okay, and we will not be okay until we can be honest about that with ourselves and with God. And we do it together. I think there's something about gathering in this space on a dark night to all come together to get marked. It's a little easier that way, right? When we are trying to break the power of an addiction in our life, or when we are trying to overcome an adversity in our life, we gather in groups. We need one another to do that. The church exists because we have to have each other to be able to follow Jesus. There is a quote that people say came from Martin Luther, and as Lutherans we like that. It sounds good, so we'll give him credit for it. And he said, "I have held many things in my hands, and I've lost them all. But whatever I have placed in God's hands, that I still possess." That's what we're here to do tonight. Put ourselves into God's hands. To follow Jesus on the way to the cross, to watch and to learn what it looks like to put ourselves and our treasure in God's hands. To store up our hopes and our purpose and our value in God's kingdom. To return to the Lord our God, who is gracious and merciful.